From the heart of the cultural capital of the Midwest, it's Artifacts, now celebrating 10 years, bringing the arts in the Minneapolis area to you. On this edition, artist Michael Frey.
I came of age in the disco era, so...
But your experience in Las Vegas, that didn't propel you into the arts, I'm guessing.
I don't think so at all. I still wish I had some of those leisure suits, though.
Is it? Well, they're probably coming back. I mean, they're probably worth something.
I think so, yeah. The bell-bottoms and everything.
Oh, yeah.
It's
everything goes retro sooner or later,
right,
so
exactly.
that's good.
A scene from Rhombus Theatre.
We came here at night, didn't we?
Oh, yes, sir.
Always at night. Pitch black, wrapped in a gray stretcher. Theoretically, I shouldn't have seen a thing. Numb to the world.
Imaginarian Maureen Koelsch.
And I was trying to find a frame for what is that? You know, what artist am I? Yeah. And I was thinking, well, I'm getting old, but I'm not an octogenarian. And then I thought, I'm an Imaginarian.
Architectural designer Cara Hill.
And so when we looked at it and we modeled it and approached it, it didn't seem to use the full height of that space. Right. And that space is just, it's beautiful when you let your eyes go up and you see the egg crates and you look at the sky.
Plus, Gina Filigenzi asks about favorite Mill City buildings. All this and more on Artifacts March 2000. Here's your host, a guy who stands up for his guests, Phill Lindsay.
Hello and welcome to the show. Well, it's March and there's a spring breeze in the air. Now, the madness of March and the fever of spring last only a while, but the bedlam we call the political season seems to go on forever. This month, the presidential race shakes out. We have a scrum or two forming in Minnesota's congressional contests, and locally, jockeying for municipal leadership already provides insiders a lot of gab and speculation. Now, what does it all mean for the arts in the Minneapolis area? Nationally, none of the major candidates are champions of change regarding the arts one way or the other. National arts groups persist in the posture of a defensive special interest group. As for arts policy in Minnesota, well, the strategy seems to be keep it clubby, draft the hoi polloi when numbers count, and stamp your feet when things don't go your way. And locally, unless someone flinches, there'll be a contest next year that, no matter what, will change the political part of the arts landscape. Some folks might even need a new map. And the Fourth Estate's role? Well, isn't it interesting we hear our governor's opinions about the arts from Playboy magazine rather than any local news franchise? But hey, seasons change, the earth awakes, maybe a big wind will come this spring and take out some deadwood. Now back here in the world's smallest studio, we're taking off the wraps ourselves. Artist Michael Frey joins us, actors from Rhombus Theatre create a scene, Imaginarian Maureen Koelsch will be here, and we'll meet architectural designer Cara Hill, and good old roving reporter Gina Filigenzi has people looking up. I'll be back with Michael Frey right after this art fact. Stay tuned. Well, although that number's pretty high, we probably should not be surprised here in Minnesota that many people think arts education is important to the children going to school in the state. Well, my first guest is a gentleman who's an artist, and I'm happy to have him on the show, Michael Frey. Nice to have you here.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Now, Michael is fulfilling his dream of becoming a painter, and he teaches, and I want to talk about all that sort of thing.
Okay.
Now, I was reading your resume, actually. You were nice enough to send that ahead, and you've come a long way since selling polyester suits in Las Vegas.
That was a job that I had back working with my Aunt Wilma, in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was one of my greatest jobs that I had. It was right on the Strip in Las Vegas.
No kidding.
And we sold leisure suits.
And this is in the heyday, right? In the 70s?
Yes. I was born in 1957, so I came of age in the disco era. So,
but your experience in Las Vegas, that didn't propel you into the arts, I'm guessing.
I don't think so at all. I still wish I had some of those leisure suits, though.
Is it? Well, they're probably coming back. I mean, they're probably worth something.
I think so, yeah. The bell-bottoms and everything.
Oh, yeah. Everything goes retro sooner or later.
Right,
so
exactly.
That's good. Well, now, where are you from originally?
I am from Butte, Montana.
Oh, all right.
And that's where I was born and then grew up in Boulder, Colorado.
All right.
So I spent about 20 years there, and I've lived in Minnesota for 20 years.
Oh, okay. So
All in the
Upper
city of-
Midwest, the High Plains, and that sojourn in Las Vegas.
Right,
Yeah.
yep.
Well, now, what brought you to Minneapolis?
I was trying to get into graduate school, and I actually applied to the University of Minnesota and came out here and worked in the university for about 6.5 years.
Okay. Now, you came to do graduate studies in what field?
The anatomy.
Oh, in anatomy.
Right.
Oh, except
Yep.
because of the medical thing. Well, that
Right.
probably helps with
It does.
some of your figure drawing.
Which is
then.
a great basis for my artistic
Interesting.
career. So I consider it preparatory work, actually.
So when did it spark that you wanted? Maybe have you painted all your life, or did something
You know,
happen?
I haven't. I spent a lot of time doing other things, which after going to school for art, I found out a lot of people had done that.
Yeah.
And people had an experience that happened where they just decided they needed to come back and fulfill their dream. And for me, it was my parents dying. Both
Yeah.
my mom and dad died in the same year, and they died 5 months apart. And it was a pretty traumatic time for me, and I just realized that I couldn't waste any more time and that I needed to go back and pursue my dream.
Well, an event like that, a situation like that, does remind us that life is short, and
Right.
what are we waiting for?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Now, when I was a kid, in terms of the arts, I got into. I wanted to drum for some reason. That came in. Did you have any inkling when you were a kid that maybe the Crayolas or the Craypas
yeah, I
or
had
something?
a lot of experience with just kind of doodling and drawing and copying newspapers. And I don't know if you remember a fellow back in the 70s, Michael Murphy. He was a singer that
Oh,
was really
sure.
big in Colorado. I used to take magazine covers and I would copy them in my sketchbook. And I remember Michael Murphy was at Woolworths one day, and so I took my copy of his picture down to Woolworths and I had him autograph it. And,
The man himself.
yeah, the man himself.
So he liked it?
At Woolworths, yeah.
At
he loved it.
That's good.
Of all places.
Now,
so.
how did you know he was at Woolworths?
I don't know. It was in the newspaper or something. So, and the poor guy, there was absolutely no one around him, and
And here comes this artist.
right,
With,
yeah, very young man. I was like 17 years old at that time,
Well, that's
so
pretty
got to
neat.
talk to him for a while.
As
so
I
it was
recall,
great.
Michael Murphy had a lot of character in his face too.
He did, big bushy beard, and he was a wonderful singer.
Yeah. And a nice subject to do some drawing.
Right, exactly.
That's pretty good.
So.
Well, now, so you had this sad situation in your personal life, and you said, now it's time to do it. What was your next step? I mean, did you go out and get some training? Did you?
Well, I started taking night classes. Minnesota is incredible about the atelier system. The field where realism drawing is coming back into vogue right now. And so Minnesota is just a hotbed for that activity. And there's a lot of schools in this area where people are studying the realist tradition.
Okay.
And so I was taking night classes, and I just thought, after my parents died, to go for it, and I applied for the full-time program and got in. So I just finished up in May.
Of 99.
Of 99, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just a recent graduate. I've been teaching to make a living, and I've been doing that for about 1.5 years out at the Edina Arts Center.
Well, in a moment, I want to ask you about some art you were nice enough to bring with. But let's kind of go back to the training and then moving into making a living here. It's not easy, is it?
I'm still pretty young at this, but I'm having a feeling that it's not. People warn me that when you first get out of school, it's going to take a couple of years to really get successful and
Get known,
get known, and so.
Well, when you're at this in the atelier system, and maybe can you explain a little bit about how that differs from other systems? Let's say you go to an art school affiliated with a university or something. How is it different? Is their tradition is different?
Right, the tradition is different, and it's a school that's based solely on drawing technique, which is somewhat of a lost art right now.
Yeah.
And they really focus you on learning how to draw exactly what you see, and so it's a great basis for training your eye and being able to capture a likeness.
Were you able to bring out the Michael Murphy picture and say, well, I did this one?
Well, yeah, I didn't actually put that in my portfolio, but...
Yeah, but there was that part of you that had done that, and,
Right.
and you wanted to move on. Well, what I wanted to ask you about is, when you're at the atelier, do they teach you there, or are you expected to go out into the world and learn how to relate with galleries and potential collectors? I mean, where do you learn that part of the business side?
Well, that's kind of the struggle I'm having right now.
Yeah.
We didn't actually cover that in school, and I feel that's kind of something that I wish they would have talked about. They just you can choose how you want to approach being an artist in Minnesota or anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
And if you want to show in galleries, or if you want to do the local scene, you want to do New York, if you just want to get commissions, portrait commissions, it's really up to you, and you have to make that decision. And I'm still in that process of learning how
Get
to
in the
do
business
that.
side of it is what
Right.
you're saying.
So
Yeah.
I think just kind of showing my face around in the galleries and finding out what other people are doing.
Is it difficult for someone out of the realist tradition to find galleries to represent you?
Actually,
Or
no.
Is it the other way around, maybe?
There are a lot of galleries out in the Galleria in Edina that are showing a lot of realist
Aptly
artists.
named, that's pretty
Right,
good.
exactly. And unfortunately, a lot of the galleries in downtown Minneapolis are no longer. They have just gone out of business.
Well,
and-
we've slipped there, yeah. There used
Right.
to be a good few dozen, and now
Right,
there's
it's-
maybe a healthy but smaller number.
I think there's only like 6 or 7 galleries, and I shouldn't say that for a fact, but as far as I know,
Yeah.
some of the bigger galleries.
Less than it was, say, 10, 12 years
Right,
ago.
exactly.
Yeah, where we
Yeah.
had kind of a de facto gallery district, really, over in the warehouse district, and then some
Right,
things moved
right.
around.
And it's sad because a lot of the places that were really fun to go see and see what was happening are no longer around. So.
Every once in a while, you hear about a little bit of tension, and I'm not quite sure how it's articulated, but a little tension between the realist school, the atelier school, and the more, I don't know what even to call it, contemporary abstract thing. I mean, is that real out there? I mean, do you encounter that?
Oh, very much so.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's a specific way of drawing, and a lot of people, unless it's in favor, it is just not very
And it's
popular.
kind of a trend, I'm guessing, as to...
Well, realism is coming back.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's coming back into vogue right now, and a lot of artists in New York are actually showing
that right?
realist work, figurative work.
Well, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you just referenced New York, one thing that I've heard that's also coming back as a way to show, to kind of get yourself seen a little bit, is salons are kind of coming back a little bit. Have you encountered that?
No,
or heard
I
of that?
haven't heard that at all.
I'm not so sure that's happening here locally.
Right,
But,
yeah.
but folks are eager to get their work out in front of folks, and with fewer galleries, I guess people are putting together small shows kind of on an invitational basis and having
Right.
people come in and look.
That's a great idea. It would
Yeah.
actually be very fun to do that. It's a little less intimidating than galleries
I
sometimes.
suppose.
So.
And it's all or nothing in the gallery. Somebody probably is looking at 500 different slides and
Right.
saying yes, yes,
Right.
no, 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 or something like
Yep.
that. Well, let's jump right now, because our interview won't go on forever, and I want to
Okay.
make sure we talk about some of your art.
Great.
And you were nice enough to bring this piece, which I find very strong here, and tell us a little bit about it and what it took to do it.
This was actually a friend of mine, and his name is Peter Thompson. And when you're in school, you actually need models, so I hired Peter, and I actually hired his girlfriend, also Katie, at the same time. And so it was very interesting that I was working with Katie on Mondays and Thursdays, and I was working with Peter on Tuesdays and Fridays, and unfortunately, they were having a tough time in their relationship.
Oh, I was just going to say something
So,
wise about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So as I was trying to concentrate on what I was doing, I was also getting an earful of what was going on in their personal relationship.
Yeah.
And I thought I did a great job. It's a beautiful piece. It's been shown at the Minnesota State Fair this past year.
Just last year, you were saying.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and I particularly like the boldness here of the color that anchors it, and then there's something going on. I don't know if it was the relationship situation, but you can see something
Right.
kind of going
People have
across
said
there.
that I've captured something about his
Yeah.
expression and what he was thinking about. He was actually looking out the window, and my studio was overlooking the train tracks and just a big field, and
Yeah.
so he was kind of contemplating whatever was going on in his own life.
When you mentioned your studio, I don't know if it was the same studio, but you have a studio in the Whittier neighborhood?
In the Wedge right
I'm
now.
sorry, I
I
said in
currently
the
live
Wedge.
in the Wedge,
Okay.
and I have a studio in the Wedge in the same building that I live in.
Oh, okay, so it's a
Fortunately-
separate space, though.
Right, separate space.
You can leave work a little bit behind
Yeah,
there.
exactly, and I got to do that. I just can't work in my
Yeah.
own personal space.
How often do you work? I mean, is it every day? Every
yeah,
day?
yeah, I try to take like a day and a half off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just getting used to the schedule
Yeah.
since I teach at night. And
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Edina Arts Center, and that's one place that you teach.
I teach at the Edina Arts Center,
Mm-hmm.
and I also teach over in St. Paul at the Art Academy in St. Paul,
Oh.
teaching 5 to 8-year-olds.
Oh, all right.
Which is wonderful. It's a great
Yeah.
experience teaching little kids.
I bet they think out of the box.
They totally think out of the box,
Yeah.
and they're such a creative group.
Right.
It's absolutely amazing. I learn a lot from them.
When I know you're based here in Minneapolis, where you live and you work, you're out at Edina. They've recently revamped their facility out
Right,
there.
they have an expansion that went on. They have a new media center that is absolutely beautiful. They have, I don't know how many computers that people can go in and do a lot of computer graphics and media graphics.
Sure.
And it's really a nice space.
Very impressive. Well, you were also nice enough to bring one more image, and we've got just a minute left. And
Okay.
as long as you brought it, I thought if you could hold it
Sure.
up and kind of center it on our camera over here.
Sure.
Obviously, a still life.
Yep, this was the very first still life I did. So after working at Norwest Bank for 8.5 years
Yeah.
and pursuing my dream, this was the first thing that I did. So,
Well, good for
and I
you.
brought it in. I really like it.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of
Well,
it.
and again, the first thing that struck me was a nice balance to it, but also the color again. Much as there's a
Right.
nice blue field here, kind of a strong grounding one, there's a nice green and yellow field here, so that's
Yes.
very nice work.
As a realist, I'm trying to capture something that's real, and everybody keeps calling these lemons, so they were actually gourds. But,
Okay.
So I don't know how I'm doing as a realist painter.
I would have made the same mistake, so I don't know. There's always room to keep working.
That's right. So
Well, Michael Frey, we're just out of time. A pleasure to have you on the
great.
show. Good
Thanks
luck
very
with your
much.
career.
Phil. Yep.
Sure. Well, we'll be doing our monthly news bit segment right after Gina Filigenzi goes out and asks people about their favorite Minneapolis architecture. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Phil. I'm Gina Filigenzi, the Artifacts roving reporter, and I'm here in downtown Minneapolis asking people what their favorite architectural building is, and if they even like the downtown Minneapolis skyline. Let's go to work. What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
I like the Norwest Bank building.
Do you like the downtown skyline?
Not as well as I used to.
Why is that?
I don't think that the buildings that are being built have any architectural uniqueness.
What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
The Fauché Tower.
Do you like the downtown skyline?
No.
Why?
Because it looks like little rats running through and people look a little crazy. That's why.
What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
I'd have to say the IDS Center.
Do you like the downtown skyline?
Yeah. Because it looks nice.
What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
Probably the Fauché Tower.
Do you like the Minneapolis skyline?
Yes.
Why?
Actually, I really like, this totally contradicts what I just said, because I like the glass, shinier buildings. So I guess I like those in general and the Fauché Tower specifically.
What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
Oh, boy, we're from out of town. Probably the IDS and the Fauché Tower, just because of its history.
Okay. Do you like the skyline?
Very much so.
Why?
It's exciting. It's, shiny and new, and it's ever-changing, constantly evolving.
What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
I like the Civic Center better. I ain't from up here. I like the Civic Center.
Do you like the downtown skyline?
Yeah.
Why?
I guess the architecture, the way it's shaped and everything, just that, just plain simple stuff. The way the curves is and the angles and everything.
I think it's the Norwest Tower here.
Do you like the downtown skyline?
I like it. I don't like a lot of the new buildings that are coming up. They're pretty bland and boxy, but many of the older buildings have a lot of character to them.
What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
Architecturally. In downtown Minneapolis, do you mean? Just in general? I really like the Guthrie Theater. I really like the way that the windows are built on the outside looking into that cafe area.
Do you like the downtown skyline?
Yes, very, very nice. I'm not from around here originally. I've lived in Minneapolis just for a few years. So the skyline in general to me is always an impressive sight. I'm from Duluth, so we don't have much of a skyline up there at all.
What is your favorite Minneapolis architectural building?
Norwest Center.
Do you like the skyline?
Yes, I do.
Why?
I think it's the most unique in the country that I've seen. And I would like that it's simple and the buildings are all real beautiful.
Well, there you have it. A lot of people seem to like the Norwest Center. Maybe that has something to do with the fact that we're standing right in front of it. I'm Gina Filigenzi. That's Food for Thought. Back to you.
Thanks, Gina. Well, we're here at the Kelly Ray Tice Gallery in the Wyman Building in the Warehouse District of downtown Minneapolis for our monthly Artifacts News Bits. We want to thank Kelly and the staff here for letting us in. Across the pond, some changes at the Tate Museum in Britain to report. British Culture Secretary Chris Smith announced recently that the new Tate Modern facility will provide free entrance when it opens May 12th. The Tate Modern will house the institution's international modern art collection from 1900 to today, including a 21st century gallery that will exhibit contemporary art, and I quote, as it is created. The opening of the new gallery, the Tate claims, is comparable to that of New York's Museum of Modern Art in the 1920s and the Pompidou Center opening in Paris a quarter century ago. Another new space, this at the museum's original Millbank site, will be known as the Tate Gallery, holding the world's largest collection of British artworks from the 16th century onward. Although work on this new quarter of the old Tate continues into next year, it opens to the public March 24th. National Lottery funds allow development of both galleries. Meanwhile, archaeologists in Spain have found ruins of what might be a Roman theater from the 1st century BCE, perhaps from the era of Augustus Caesar. The size of the site, the nature of materials excavated, and a previously discovered base used for theater bleachers all indicates the probable ancient use of the site in Seville. Back here in the land of liberty, Tiger Woods, the champion golf pro, takes Alabama artist Rick Rush to court in a few weeks. The international management group represents Woods. IMG created ETW Corp to market Woods' likeness and name. And that entity says the artist is violating Woods' trademark and name and will present its suit in May. Rick Rush, for 25 years, has created serigraphs of sports stars. His work, The Masters of Augusta, which shows Tiger Woods prominently and is available in a series of numbered prints, is the art at issue. The lawyer for Rush's publisher may cite as relevant the recent court decision denying Rosa Parks' claim against the musical group Outkast for using her name as the title of a song in their recent album Aqua Mini. And here in the Mill City, El Colegio, a public arts and environmental high school, opens this fall in South Minneapolis. Approved by the State Board of Education in 1999, the new charter school will provide instruction in Spanish and English, focused on Chicano, Latino, and Mexicano cultures, along with the arts, the environment, and technology. Partners include Cray Arte Chicano Latino Arts Center and Museum, Augsburg College, and the Department of Natural Resources. An information and registration office for El Colegio is open at El Mercado Central at Bloomington Avenue and Lake Street in South Minneapolis. And we'll be back with our next guests right now.
I've got to see them. Every last one of them. Oh, these women, Raoul, wait until you see them. Wait until you see the way they carry themselves. Like visions, like moving pictures. How are they coming?
Jet, sir.
Individually?
Oh, yes, sir.
We have that many planes left.
I think so.
Good. Do my feet. My feet.
Jet, sir. Oh.
Pull me up first!
Yes, sir.
Pull me up!
Yes, sir.
Oh, pictures, Raoul. Pictures. Every shift of the body brings a new wave. It's amazing, almost a rejuvenating effect, or I shouldn't go overboard in my expectation. We came here at night, didn't we?
Oh, yes, sir.
Always at night. Pitch black, wrapped in a gray stretcher. Theoretically, I shouldn't have seen a thing. Numb to the world.
Well, there was a full moon.
I was asleep.
Yeah, you'd awake in fits.
Fits.
Spurts.
Oh, yeah. Short bursts of waking. Still, that doesn't explain these vivid details. Golden beaches, black-headed kids, shimmering silver waves. How do you account for that?
You're seeing that now?
Off and on. It must come from the touching. Do my feet.
I am, sir.
You are?
Yes, sir.
You're doing them now?
Yes, sir.
That's funny, I can't feel a thing.
Well, it comes and it goes, doesn't it, sir?
That's right. Comes and goes. Can't depend on it. Why all these images, then?
Well, we could open up that curtain and...
No! Nothing from the outside comes in here. Not life, not sun, not moon, not sound, not nothing.
No, sir, I'm sorry.
That's the law. That's the absolute law.
I know, sir.
What the suggestion? Curtain open in the middle of the day?
Well, I just thought you might want it for a second. See, just for a minute or two.
Stop trying to make your desires mine. If you need a vacation, it can be arranged. Don't piddle around in here trying to figure out what's best for you in the disguise of what's best for me. We've been together too long for that.
Well, I just thought if you were seeing things, it might be good to open up the room.
Seeing things. The room's got nothing to do with it. I was seeing things before you were born. Before I was born, I was seeing things. I prefer seeing things to having them crash through my window in the light of day. It's a preference, not a disappointment.
Would you like something to eat, sir?
Why do you always do that? Why do you constantly switch the areas of my concern? Food is not on my mind. Food has nothing to do with what's on my mind. Pictures are on my mind. And you put food in there? They don't mix. Pictures of food don't mix.
I'm sorry, sir.
You need to be more sensitive, Raoul, to the subtle shifts in my intellectual activity. The mind covers a wide range of territory, sometimes simultaneously traveling several different hemispheres in a single sweep, then diving suddenly for the kill.
I understand, sir.
You do? You understand what the prey is? The prey is an idea. A single, lonely, fleeting idea trying to duck into a rabbit hole when the mind comes sweeping in for the kill.
That's a beautiful idea, sir.
That's not an idea. That's a description. An idea is something useful. Do my back. My back!
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Very nice. Well, I'm standing here with members of the Rhombus Theatre. Shannon Cooper, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Well, it's nice to have you here. A new company to town, relatively, last couple years. Would you introduce these gentlemen here who just did this fine part of a scene?
Absolutely. This is Christian Gaylord and Christopher Twoomey.
All right. Now, for those who are just tuning in, they're saying, now, what was that all about? What were they just doing? What was that part of?
This is part of a scene from a show called Seduced by Sam Shepard. And we just finished doing this other run at the Acadia Cafe and Cabaret Theater. And this is a scene, we've got Henry Hackamore, who is Christian, is playing, and Chris is playing Raoul, his bodyguard. And basically, the premise, this is pretty towards the beginning, pretty near the beginning of the show, and this guy is basically enclosed in a tropical place in a hotel. He's kind of headed towards the end of his life. He's deteriorating, very sick.
And he ended up with a very special bodyguard, I think. He's willing to rub feet and do a little more than that.
Get a little close there.
Well, now, how does this fit in with kind of the mission? What is the typical kind of show that Rhombus Theatre likes to do? What are you guys about?
We're all about challenging our audience and ourselves. You know, we really try very hard to maintain a really high level of artistic standards, and what we try to do is find pieces that challenge is a big word, that find a way for us to reach beyond ourselves in order to produce the wonderful quality of show. And hopefully we're going to encourage our audience to reach beyond themselves as well, to think about something they've never thought about before, you know, feel something they've never felt before, you know, hopefully to incite a reaction.
Well, and Shepard's pretty contemporary. Do you reach further back in the repertoire, or do you stay with contemporary work?
Yeah, no, it doesn't really matter what the time period is.
As long as it fits that criteria.
Yeah, something that speaks to us with our mission statement.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know you closed that run last month at the Acadia. Nice space to do a show, yeah?
Wonderful.
How are the crowds?
Excellent. Very good. It's a really intimate space, and so when we get it filled up, it's really nice. You've got people really close to us, too, which I'm sure is interesting for the actors.
Well, just standing here listening to these two, I mean, there was some emotive power there to what you guys were presenting, so I would think in that space it'd be nice to engage with your show.
Yeah.
That's good. But now I know later this year you've got another project coming up?
Yes, we're going to be at the Minnesota Fringe Festival doing a production of Bringing It All Back Home by Terrence McNally.
That sounds good.
Yes, and it's a wonderful and really, really interesting
And as I
show.
recall, Fringe Festival is what, like late July?
Late July through mid-August.
Oh, mid-August, okay. Well, that's
First 2 weeks in August.
Well, we'll look for you. And if folks want to find out a little bit more about the Rhombus Theatre, there's a phone number they can call?
Yes, the phone number is area code 612-879-9884. And we also do have a website that you can access and get information about us at www.rhombustheater.org. .org,
that's right.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. It's theater R-E, not E-R.
That's right. You got to get that right, because it could be the other way and you'll end up somewhere in Paducah looking for the other Rhombus Theater. So that's good. Well, thank you all for being here. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll look for you at the Fringe Festival.
Yes, please.
And we hope you get in touch with the Rhombus Theater. Now, I'll be back in a little bit with my next guest, but first we're going to go back in the archives of artifacts for a bit that we saw on this show maybe 8 or 9 years ago. Stay tuned. Where do you do this?
Which?
Juggle.
For work?
Yeah. How do you make a living doing this?
I don't do, obviously, you know, I don't go anywhere and just juggle and make money.
Right.
I work in comedy clubs. I used to work a lot in comedy clubs. Actually, gosh, it's a lineage. I mean, both Phil and I started more in the street.
Yeah.
You know, working for
peanuts,
the homeless, really.
That's right.
And
as the homeless.
As the homeless, there was a tight bond there.
Yeah.
It's that guy from Can 3.
So you started in the streets.
So we started in the streets, moved to like Renaissance Festival, which is a glorified street. Then moved into comedy clubs.
Right. And you've done colleges.
Then went to colleges, and
Okay.
now I primarily try to focus on corporate events.
Okay. So now what do they book you in for? I mean, I know what you
everything.
do, but
Sales meetings, any kind of incentive thing. I even did a presentation for a company that wanted to do the marketing business for Lotus Computers.
Right.
They flew me in there, and I did like 10 minutes at the end of their presentation to just kind of nail home a point.
and you're talking about juggling now.
I was juggling
skill that you
in
have.
comedy, and
Yeah.
you know, just
and the verbal.
being a character more or less. But I mean, it's everything I do centers around juggling.
Well, I can't have a juggler as good as you are on the show without asking you to do a little bit of demonstration
I
of
would
what you
be happy to do so.
Speaking of presentation. Now take your mic off there.
Yes, I will do so.
And what are you going to start with?
I'm going to start with I'm going to go with 3 clubs, and then I might try a kind of a newer thing. I'm going with the 5 balls.
5 green apples there. Okay.
You have
Sounds
to get that in.
Well, yeah. Well, you,
All right.
and you're not going to drop.
I will drop exceedingly much, but let's see if I can even remember what I was planning on doing. Okay, first, you're going to have to get out of the room.
Get out of the way here. All right.
That's a little bit of 3. Oh, here, I wanted to do this because you thought it looked good.
I do think that looks good. And having tried it myself, I know how hard that is.
Okay. And the 5 balls. That was an attractive shot there, wasn't it?
That's very good.
Just turned around there.
And for anybody that watches that and doesn't think that's hard, I suggest you try it with 2 balls.
Yeah.
And welcome back. You're watching Artifacts, and I'm Phill Lindsay. And what you just saw was just a piece from our archives. And over the next year, I think we'll be pulling out a few things from the vaults. So now my next guest is a woman known as an Imaginarian. She's Maureen Koelsch, and it's a pleasure to have her on the show. I love that title, Imaginarian.
Hi, thanks.
That's great. And actually, although we weren't close friends or anything, we kind of go back in a little bit of history to a wonderful facility, I guess in the 70s, the Guild of Performing Arts. On the West Bank, yeah.
It was a fantastic place where there was dance and art and music.
Yeah, that's right. They had a gallery space in the front of it. That's right.
Right.
Forgotten about that. And what were you doing at the GPA then?
Well, I was a young dancer. I was in the apprentice company for Nancy Hauser.
Yeah.
And I can remember going into class and walking past Susanna Hauser doing flamenco in the outer studio.
What a mix of things, both in that space but in those days too.
And the music.
Yeah.
There was always music around. It was
Stuff
beautiful.
going on.
It was
That
wonderful.
Was fun. And you've carried on. You've persisted.
Well, I think that comes to my idea of Imaginarian.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the kinds of work I do. There's so many parts that play into it. I'm a mover and dancer. I'm an artist, visual artist, and little paper cutter artist. I love music. I love text and writing. And I was trying to find a frame for what is that? You know, what artist am I?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, I'm getting old, but I'm not an octogenarian. And then I thought, I'm an Imaginarian.
Nowhere near. But that's a lovely term because it does sort of encompass a lot of things I know you're interested in.
And part of it is not just the performance part of it, which I love to do and do frequently, but also I do a lot of workshops and classes, and I work in the schools, and I work in different kinds of organizations, social service organizations, health organizations, art museums. So
now some of those sort of sound reasonable that you'd expect, but when you talk about going into some of these corporate settings, why are they bringing you in there? What are they, health organizations?
Well, you know, I've actually done business seminars. I've been the movement person for some business seminars. And one of the things that I think now we see throughout our communities, people are really interested in how are you alive and present in the moment? How are you aware? How does that best enhance yourself to be a leader, to be someone who creates new ideas?
Mm-hmm.
And they're really bringing in artists because that's where the creation lies. It's the touchstone for creation and transformation.
Well, I think the buzzword is to help folks in more conventional thinking maybe think outside the box a little bit. You know, we tend to think of the relationship between the business world and the arts as, well, they're the sponsors of the papers, they're the money people, and that goes on. But what you're saying is that there's also a direction the other way where the artists are coming in, maybe helping them with a little bit more of that creativity.
Absolutely, and I've loved being part of that community, going in, and we've actually, I've had people who are line workers create dances. I mean, it's really been fantastic.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Now, you mean on the line? They're out there
well, no,
sticking widgets together with... And
I wish. Next, that's next.
All right, a little quality control here. And that's good.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But you work with these folks obviously outside the setting of the actual workshop, and then there they are doing stuff like that.
But people like Wendy Morris go into the businesses actually and work right in the business.
I think it sounds healthy.
So,
that's good.
It's fantastic.
What are some of the other projects you've been working on? I know you've got a big, exciting one coming up, and we'll talk about that. But what are some of the other things? I know, in fact, this is it right here, isn't it? This is a list of just last year.
Yes.
Folks, obviously you can't parse this out word for word, but that's single space type there. What'd you do in '99, Maureen?
A lot of the things that I really love, I've done a workshop now for 3 years in a row called A Life in Performance. And it's a week-long workshop, and people who are artists as well as people who are just simply curious come and explore the idea of life as performance and performance as life. And we do several kinds of exercises where, you know, we might just, okay, how does this speak to me?
I've often been doing that, but I don't call that art. I'll be looking at a cup saying, now what in the world am I doing here? Well, that's good, though. I like that.
That's like a starting point.
Can I get a grant for that? I mean, that's pretty good.
Hardly.
All right. Maybe it gets a refill or something like that. Well, and now you do that independently. That's something you do as Maureen Koelsch, Imaginarian.
Yep.
That's good.
One of the other things I've done, I was at the Wiseman Art Gallery. I was an artist over there doing a workshop with their Maps at Worldviews exhibit.
That was a nice exhibit,
It was a gorgeous exhibit. It was very exciting and a wonderful place to start thinking about our lives and moving into 2000. I mean, it was right over that holiday.
So a little cartography, a little choreography.
You've got it.
That's good.
You've got it.
Well, I want to jump right in because you're doing a neat project with, what, an old friend, an old colleague?
This is
Tell us about it. It's here and
and there.
Yeah.
Deborah Siegel, who is someone, as young dancers, we came together and began dancing a choreogram in 1972.
Choreogram, there you go.
Yeah,
you
remember.
Oh, sure.
And we haven't actually worked together since 1975, but we've always talked about it. We're both still very much involved in dance.
Yeah.
And Deborah, Lynx Hall down in Chicago has an opportunity for us to apply for this little production called Here and There. And we received it, and we're trying to create work with her in Chicago and me in Minneapolis, and not having worked together for more than 20, 25 years.
Wow, that's very impressive.
It's very exciting.
Did you tell? Is that what you brought? You've got a text portion of this?
You know, I brought, one of the things that we've been doing is creating text and sending it back and forth. And one of the things we will do in performance is to read text and have the other person perform to it. And some of it's actually choreographed, some of it will be improvisational.
Oh, all right.
And I thought I'd like to just do a short one, just read one of the short ones that we have.
So, not to be facetious, but the viewers right now and I could be theoretically kind of getting ready to do some movement to what you're reading.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so
That's
get ready,
exactly
folks.
right.
Okay, Maureen Koelsch.
Okay. Tripped like a rock, like a rock, like a rocket. I can see. Rocco, rock me, baby, Rocco, rock me, baby. I can see you. I can see you. see who you are. I can see who am I. I can see past the who am I to the who is you. I am not a rock. I am flesh and blood and bone. My heart is fever and flowing. Don't be fooled. Watch out. Catch yourself. Watch your step. Catch yourself before you take another step. Before you, fool, step. There might be, oh, yes, there might be. Oh, yes, there just might be a rock, a stone, a heart stone. Oh, yes, there just might be a heart. You might trip.
Interesting. Wow, boy, that just leaves a lot of possibilities there for performance, for movement, for thought. Now, you wrote that.
I did.
And then that you're collaborating with your partner,
Deborah.
Deborah, in Chicago.
Correct.
And that'll be part of the larger experience for folks.
Correct.
Okay, now what's the venue? What kind of a space will
It's
people
wonderful.
partake?
It's Lynx Hall in Chicago. It's been there since Bob Eisen is the originator with a number of other people. He's still there. He's just this year going to New York to try something different. Okay. It's a loft space in this wonderful big old building in Chicago.
Well, how
it's
exciting.
like, it reminds me of the Guild.
Does it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
It sounds very creative.
It is.
Nice venue.
Yeah.
Can we shift gears just a moment as
Sure.
someone who's been very involved with dance, movement, and those related arts? And I know you used to work for a while at the Dance Alliance.
Yes, on and off a lot. For
Yeah.
the last 20 years, on
Helping,
and
and
off.
that's a great resource, and you've
It's a
helped
wonderful resource.
keep that going. But I know a few years ago you were brave enough to, because I think I read something in there in the Alliance
You
newsletter,
did.
to kind of step out on your own and give this a shot. How's it been trying to make a living based on your creativity, your imagination?
It's a struggle. It's
Yeah?
a struggle. People are very interested and really want to use me as a resource, but even in this age where people are talking about so much money and things being really financially very sound, it's not easily available to artists.
Even
It's
in this
not-
economic boom, it's
not.
It's not trickling down, is what
It's
I think
not.
you're saying.
It's
Yeah.
not.
So
It's
how do you go
not.
about it? What do you do? How do you
Make a lot of phone calls.
Do
I
ya?
do a lot of
All right.
writing.
Yeah.
I go out and see people and meet
Mhm.
with people. I come and do shows like this so people know that I'm
well,
around and
fair
doing
enough.
things.
Sure. In other words, get the word out. Now, when you were trained, I asked an earlier guest this same question. When you were trained in dance, and by the way, what was your training?
It was well. I
How'd you start out?
Well, when I was little, tiny,
Yeah.
I had the idea that I wanted to either be a ballerina or an auto mechanic.
Okay.
And I guess
Well, those are related, I guess. Now you're back in the line, getting
That's
these
right.
guys to move.
You
This
got
is
it.
good.
You got it.
Okay, but something made the
Yeah,
connection.
I worked a little bit when I was young. I was danced when I was young. I was in visual arts. I used to take classes at the Museum of Modern Art and Sculpture when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And then actually I went back. I was at Webster College in theater and dance,
Right.
and this is in St. Louis, Missouri. And we had a person come substitute for a class, and she said she didn't teach us any dance, but she talked about Margaret Dietz, who ran Choreogram.
Oh, sure.
And when I dropped out of school in the early 70s, I thought, oh, I'll go to Minneapolis
And you went
dance.
upriver and
I did.
connected with choreogram.
I did.
All right.
But then I have, that's not the end of it by any means. I have a bachelor's degree from the University in dance.
Okay.
I have a master's degree from St. Mary's in human development with an emphasis on dance and performance.
Okay, so I can see how that connects with what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing. Well, and that's partly the question I was leading up to is, in terms of making these calls and getting the word out, I mean, that's not part of what you're taught, though, really. I mean, you have the
No.
technical training and the passion for it, and then you're kind of out there in the world.
I think, though, more and more, and not true certainly of everyone, but I think more and more artists, that's the wonder about artists. They need to cultivate all these resources in order to live.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful at it.
Yeah. We've got just a moment or two left. Who do you see out there that's dancing? Your age, younger, older? Who's dancing in the Twin Cities?
Actually, this is in the Twin Cities. We really have the spectrum. It's wonderful. I mean, I feel like we're even still very strongly supported by her presence of Sage Koelsch, who was a wonderful dancer.
yeah.
You know, and who now is very encouraging of Merce Cunningham, who is certainly one of the elders.
Sure. So a lot of folks is what you're saying.
A lot of folks.
A lot of people doing it. Well, Maureen, we're just out of time. Thanks for sharing that snippet, that part
Thanks.
of your big project in Chicago.
Thanks for letting me have a chance to do it.
If people wanted to get in touch with the Imaginarian, is there a phone number they can call?
Yeah, 612-724-9130.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Pleasure to have
Phil.
you on the show.
That's great. Thanks.
You bet. Well, now I'll have my next guest, architectural designer Kara Hill, on the show right after this art quote, so stay with us. And we're back, and I'm very excited to have my next guest on. And in fact, if any of you out there in TV land have been to the IDS Center, especially in the Crystal Court, you have seen some work by my next guest, Kara Hill. Kara, glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me. And of course, the IDS Center is perhaps the signature building, the architectural building here in Minneapolis, that great international style by Johnson, right?
Philip Johnson and
Philip Johnson.
Bergey. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's right. And as an architect and somebody who has architectural history behind her, you would know a little bit more about that. Let's just start right off with that. I'm going to bet 80% of our viewers here have been to the IDS Center in the last year, maybe?
Really?
I'm guessing.
I would hope so.
Well, if you haven't, get down there.
That'd be great.
That's right. But what they see now here in early 2000 is a little different than they might have seen a couple years ago.
Sure.
And you had a big part in that. What did you do?
Well, we called it the reinstallation in the Crystal Court, but basically the Crystal Court was designed as, what's a phenomenal indoor space, and people have called it one of the best in the nation. And originally it was designed with some planters, some kiosks, some benches, and it was all dated, it wore out, and there have been a lot of different management that have come through.
Sure.
And so Kennedy Wilson approached us and said, we want to revitalize the Crystal Court. What do we do? And they were a great client because what we did is we started with a model, a huge model of the Crystal Court, and we just moved pieces in. So we would model everything and try them in the space and think about how people would interact. And so some clients really liked to get involved, and they did, and they were wonderful.
Well, that's great.
So through that process, we decided that the key elements were bringing back plants, bringing back vegetation, because the whole point of that interior piece is a green space that's open all 4 seasons.
And historically,
and in Minnesota,
great. Yeah, you need
we really
place.
need that place
Yeah.
all year round. And then seating. And then Johnson really, he talked about he didn't want canned music or anything like mall-like.
Bless his heart.
And he said, wouldn't it be nice to hear water?
Yeah.
And so originally he had designed a fountain. It sat, in fact, where our water comes down.
At the same location.
Same location.
Right.
But it was a bronze column. And it was very simple. It was much lower. And it's very similar to ones that are in PV Plaza. So if you just walk down Nicollet right now, you'll see very similar ones.
Oh, all right. Those sort of cylindrical icons there.
Exactly.
All right.
And so when we looked at it and we modeled it and approached it, it didn't seem to use the full height of that space. And that space is just, it's beautiful when you let your eyes go up and you see the egg crates and you look at the sky. And so we started to think, how can we be as minimal as possible so we don't compete with the space and reintroduce water? And that became, how about just letting water free fall from
That's right. And harks back
the
to that
roof.
idea of having the sound there.
Exactly.
Kind of minimalist, but very elegant. I
Exactly.
think it's an elegant solution.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
I would assume you've heard very, very many good things about what you all did there.
It's gotten phenomenal.
And now
reviews.
that would be an
It's great.
example of how I've been describing you, and tell me if I'm accurate. Architectural designer?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, on projects, you help design space.
Right, right. And then what was interesting in this project is that as a historian, I felt very comfortable looking back at Johnson's work and saying, what's interesting about this space? And in fact, Johnson is part of the International Style, which is a very modern, minimalist group. But if you look at Johnson's work, it's a little pop. He really catches there's a sense of humor in his work that you don't see in someone like Mises' work. And so that's why we didn't think it had to be so severe.
Yeah.
His work really does invite people and people's interaction.
I hadn't thought of that in terms of being just a tad pop in the way you're saying it.
Oh, the lights.
Yeah, part of the zeitgeist of the 70s,
exactly,
maybe?
Yeah.
All
The
right.
zogs, he joked about the zogs, and that's the way it's designed to sit in that space. We looked at the circulation patterns of the people already in the space, so we just stood there and kind of mapped people.
So that was you guys up there on the balcony?
That was us,
Okay.
yeah, we admit it.
All right.
And we just kind of mapped that the foot patterns, and that's
Right.
how we created the plan.
Well, congratulations. It's a lot. And it
Thank
must have
you.
been a thrill to work on that particular.
It was,
I mean,
it
here
was,
you are
it
in
was
Minneapolis,
great.
and let's do the IDS Crystal Court.
It was wonderful, and one of my closest friends is good friends with Johnson, and so she went to him with all of this, and he loves it. He
Oh,
thinks
that's-
it's fabulous, and he said, I wouldn't have put exactly what was designed originally. That was for then.
Yeah.
This is a new period, and so to hear that
Move with the
from
times.
Johnson,
Wow.
it's great.
That's a great
You know, he's
message.
still 94, and he's
Is he
still
living in a glass box somewhere?
He still lives in his glass house in New Canaan, but
Yeah.
it's amazing. He's still working all the time. Best friends with Frank Gehry. It's
Amazing.
94.
One of the things that first drew me to want to have you on this show was when I
Uh-oh.
first heard of you, the phrase art and architecture was mentioned.
Mhm.
And so you have an art history background, is that right?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I graduated high school from Minneapolis, but had lived in New York and was dying to go back to New York City. And so went to, in fact, Columbia was not co-ed then, so I went to Barner College of Columbia and got my degree in art and architecture, and in fact worked for money to go to school, I worked in art galleries in New York.
Oh, what
and
fun.
So it was great, and I worked in a couple of museums.
All
and-
right. Now, do you tend to specialize then? I mean, or are you just hoping that the clients that come in the door have something with some sort of an arts facility to it? I know you work on other things as well, but is that close to your heart? You'd really like to work on arts-related projects?
I love working on arts-related projects because so early on I was working in galleries and working in museums, and so that is definitely a preference. But I also have, as I joked with you, I do art and animals. I also do a lot of buildings having to do with animals and plants, which I also love. And I know they're very opposite, but
well, some of the artists I know, I'm not so
yeah,
sure.
true.
Now, you're working on a zoo project.
I am. I'm working on the Como Park Education Resource Center project. It's at St. Paul's Como Park. It's a building that they have planned since the 70s. And we came on and we looked at this, and Como has such an intimate feel with the conservatory.
Yeah.
And this new building is a building that will tell the story about plants and animals together, which is something that you don't see very often at zoos or in conservatories.
Good point,
You go to the Arboretum, you learn about plants. You go to the zoo, you learn about animals. And Como wanted to bring their two great resources, the conservatory and the zoo, together, and that's what this new building will be
Any
doing.
nod towards the Japanese garden, just to the north?
In fact, we are going to be reworking some of that area. Their bonsai work is fabulous, so they're looking at some new gardens that will connect to that.
Well, I give them credit for the vision, because you're right. They have that beautiful conservatory. They've got the critters just across the way there, and
Exactly.
find the intersection.
Well, and the other problem they have is right now, and that's the old zoos, is they didn't have a lot of interior space. And back to Minnesota in winter, to have school groups out there, they freeze. You just go from these little pavilions. So this new building allows people to interact with the plants and animals, but be in classrooms, and so there's exhibit space, there's classroom space, and they can teach about their collection, because their collection is just amazing.
Oh,
the conservatory has an incredible collection of orchids, and it's really...
What a nice project for you to work on.
It's a great project.
That's great.
Yeah.
In our show, we have a feature. We send Gina Filigenzi out to interview just folks on the streets. And the question she's asking people for this month is, what's your favorite piece of Minneapolis architecture? Well, here I've got you here. Other than projects you've worked on, because we kind of have to take those off the table. What are some of your favorite things to look at here in Minneapolis? Structurally, buildings, the built environment, perhaps?
I'm a big fan of the IDS Tower itself.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of Johnson's, if not Johnson's, best work.
So worldwide, you're saying, in his whole body of work?
I think it's a really strong piece. If you look at just the way the mullions work, the way the whole box comes together, it's really a delightful work. The Fauché Tower is great. Bunchaff's Federal Reserve Bank, which I'm really excited they're going to reuse, is a fabulous building.
I understand some nice landscaping on the slope there down towards Nicollet, so that should be a nice little bridge there, maybe to the public arena.
Right, and I'm kind of jumping. We've talked. One of my other projects is Avenue of the Arts.
I was going to bring that up. Great opportunity there.
And part of what I love about working on that project is part of what we're doing is not just creating art on the avenue, but it's also helping people see the art around them. And Minneapolis and St. Paul, but especially Minneapolis, has great architecture. And I think people don't really recognize that. They don't recognize that they have an I.M. Pei building there. Well, Pei did the pyramid at the Louvre. He's a world-renowned architect.
Good point, yeah.
A Philip Johnson building. The Richardsonian Romanesque, in fact, of this building, of the City Hall, is a great building. The Government Center. We have all these buildings that we just kind of walk by and we don't really look up. And part of what we're talking about with Avenue of the Arts is, and of course this is a rather egotistical thing to say, but architecture is part of the arts. It's part of the Beaux-Arts. And the fact that architecture is really sculpture. And we want people to start looking. So the Avenue of the Arts, which is 3rd Avenue, not only has great works on its own avenue and commissioned pieces, but it's a great vantage point for looking at other buildings. And often IDS is probably not best to look at right next to it. It's better a few blocks back.
Oh, that's a good point. Scale, obviously.
The scale. And so 3rd Avenue, there's great Art Deco buildings. There's a wealth of architectural.
Just to orient our viewers, we're talking about 3rd Avenue running from the riverfront through that heavily downtown stretch, but also past the convention center heading south into the Whittier neighborhood to the Art Institute and Children's Theater area.
Right. And then you go up, when you go up into the neighborhood, there are so many houses. Those neighborhoods, Stevens, a lot of Stevens is a historically designated area with beautiful buildings, as well as Whittier itself. And so the whole avenue has a wealth of great architecture. The old Pillsbury mansions and things.
Yes, and again, whether it's a walking tour or people can come down and maybe drive it down the road, another nice opportunity. Well, we're just out of time. I wanted to thank you for being here. One last word, any other big projects coming up that you're excited about?
In the Twin Cities?
Yeah, anywhere.
Okay, I'm working on an art museum in Colorado Springs, which is really an exciting addition to a building. And then the Como Park Education Resource Center. Rochester Art Center. We've designed a new building, a new art museum in Rochester, Minnesota.
Oh, right here in the state?
Yeah.
Okay. Not New York, but Rochester, Minnesota?
Rochester,
well, they have a nice
Minnesota
facility now, so you're...
Exactly. They have a wonderful program down there.
Very exciting.
So another, that'd be a wonderful thing for you in the future to talk to the director of that. So.
Thank you. Kara, very nice to have you on the show and
my
sharing a little
pleasure
bit
to be
about
here.
your life and your work.
Okay.
Well, I'll be back to wrap the show in just a moment, but first let's take a look at the Artifacts events calendar. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Artifacts, and in addition to the events we just listed on our calendar, I always like to mention a few things here at the end of the show. There are going to be some audio-described and American Sign Language described shows. The Jungle Theater will be doing On the Verge, audio-described March 16th. That's in their space in South Minneapolis. And the Guthrie will be presenting the Darker Face of the Earth. That'll be American Sign Language described March 17th. At the Guthrie, of course, down near Loring Park. By the way, folks who are involved with arts education may like to know that they're going to do another, what they call Urban Retreat for the Arts. This is Urban Retreat for the Arts 2, and these are the folks kind of involved with that big, mega Annenberg grant with the Minneapolis Public Schools. That's going to be happening June 14, 15, and 16. You could get in touch with folks at the Minneapolis Public Schools, and that will again be up at North Community High School. And it's not too early to mention to you folks who want to be part of it, the 2000 Uptown Art Fair is coming up first weekend in August, and there's a registration deadline if you want to be considered to be part of what's on display there. I believe March 25th is the deadline, and you got to get in touch with the Uptown Association. So that's coming up for those craftspeople that want to be involved with that. Now, Theater Live, they put on the programming, most of it anyhow, down at the Orpheum and State Theaters. Their theater department, their education department of Theater Live has a new hotline. It's an events hotline, and this is if you're interested in their family days, what they call Explore a Musical Theater Day, Teachers' Nights. They have tours, wonderful tours of some of the old theatrical spaces downtown. So the hotline there is 612-373-5642. That's the new Theater Live event hotline downtown. And also in the Warehouse District, Club Ache has a new thing going on here. It's live jazz every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights from 8 p.m. till midnight. So that's down in the Warehouse District. And the good news is no cover charge there. And I've just got to share this with you. Our director, John Harrison, is a papa again. I'm going to hold this here. This is child number 2. Christina Leone, if I've got the name right. And she's a darling, he's a darling, and he's here taping this show on 2 hours sleep. So our crew, it's the best. I just wanted you to see Dad and the child, and congratulations to Mom and the other daughter too, all right? So, hope you've enjoyed this show. We'll see you next time. If you want to call and find out about anything that happened on this show, we have our own hotline, 673-2234. So you can call, find out more about the guests we've had on or some of the things we've talked about. So we'll see you next month on Artifacts. I'm Phill Lindsay. Till then.